Awesome. 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 Well, first off, before we get started, I just want to say a huge thank you for the invitation. Just thank you so much for the time and being able to present Webflow to us today. Just really excited about what we're getting to learn, and just would love to, before jumping into it, kind of learn what's all of our backgrounds. And so it looks like there might be, maybe 6 or 7 of us. I want to learn about the backgrounds in web design and development from each of us, and then what we would ultimately love to create, and what's the thing we'd love to learn about Webflow today. And so to start it off, I might pick on somebody. Would anyone want to start us off? What's your current background in web design and development? Might pick on somebody if someone's open to it. Sydney, would you like to share?
Get the question.
Anyone like to possibly share their current web design and development background? Maybe Laura. Oh, I didn't get the question. Perfect. Thank you. And feel free to, in our Zoom chat, feel free to message me. And so I'll write the question down here in the Zoom chat. What's your current background in web design and development? Current background in web design and development. I would love to learn about each of us here.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Hello? Yeah,
Can you hear me?
I can, yes. What's your current background in web design and development?
Okay. So for web design, I don't know if Bootstrap counts. I've used Bootstrap to create some sort of website. And for web development, I've actually used, basically, I don't build for the web, I build for mobile. So I've used React Native, basically JavaScript language. Yeah.
Awesome. That's good to know. Anyone else would like to share? New. Karen is new. She knows JS and does automation. Oh, that's really cool. Awesome. We have someone saying intermediate, which is really cool. Oh, this is going to be great. So I'm excited. We're going to learn a lot today. Very new to nice. Done WordPress before though. Nice, awesome. And that's the same direction that I came from. I initially started doing WordPress. And if anyone's wondering where I'm reading this from our chat. So feel free to enter anything there in our chat. So I also started kind of in WordPress, hand coding some simple landing pages, but then went to WordPress to have a content management system that I could manage and pass off to clients. So I'm very much the same, done some WordPress as well before doing Webflow. All right, the next question is, what would you ultimately love to create? Like, what is the ultimate direction? Like, you're in this thing, you're learning all the things. What is it that you would ultimately love to create? Now, I'll ask this question in the chat first so we can all see it. I would love to hear from any of us. What would you ultimately love to create on the web? be a membership site. It could be the next Facebook. It could be the next Twitter. It could be your own, whatever your creation. What would you ultimately love to create? I'd love to hear from at least one of us. Nice. A flexible marketplace. I love it. I love it. A flexible marketplace. That's pretty cool. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for the chat and opening up and sharing. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into our presentation today and going to start sharing the screen here. Dun, dun, dun. Clicking on sharing screen, desktop, share screen, drag this to make it full screen. And if you're interested in wondering, I can share this in the chat as well with us. This is what I'm using as my schedule. So as you can see here, once I share this in the chat, you can kind of keep tabs on what I'm going to be sharing. So I'm gonna share this link in the chat and you can go here and just see. So right now we just went over general introductions, and the next thing I'm going to do is share a little bit about myself and my background and how I got here at Webflow. Then we're going to jump into creating in Webflow and starting with a free account. Then we're going to introduce the Webflow University. Then we're going to get our hands dirty if you're in front of a computer and learn how you can build in Webflow, creating a homepage using the CMS content management system and adding forms. And then like we shared here, someone's talking about being able to use integration. We're going to talk about using integration and creating responsive websites and adding e-commerce.
No, like I don't have cash right now. I don't have money. You have money in your account. Oh,
Definitely.
I said bring that 5,000.
Awesome. Mute some of us here so we can all hear. Thank you. Great call. Perfect. Nice. Can everyone hear me now? Awesome. So just a little bit about myself, and feel free, I got chat open. If you have any questions during this, feel free to ask. So hello. If you might already notice, I'm a huge smiley person. I love being positive and just digging in and learning. So let's dig into it. Quickly, just some short story time. So this person here, going to mute really quick here. Awesome. This person here to the right of our screen, this person is all smiles, newly married, recently hired as a front-end developer, and just discovered the immense powers that Webflow gives him to bring ideas to life. This was my little cubicle working at Merritt's, and I started as a front-end developer there. But my journey before that was learning web design by hand coding, and then going into different courses and on YouTube. YouTube was a great place for me to learn, and then continuing on until being able to have an opportunity to work as a front-end developer. Then next here, at this new job at Merritt's, he gets to create microsites, but they aren't engaging. The sites are built well, but there's no interactivity. So these websites that we created there were sites that allow people to sign up for programs and different types of events. So this was an event program website. And as Micah continues to learn Webflow and to use it, he better understands the box model and JavaScript by using the interactions that was back then, it was called IX1. And I think this was 2014 or so. And he was doing this and exporting the code. And he was creating these landing pages for microsites that he presents to the team. Now, this was all new to everyone there at Merritt's. And so this, just as any of us might know, going to a new platform took some conversations. It took some wondering what this might mean for us as a team. And so after seeing some of the powerful opportunities with Webflow, being able to create interactions, and this is going to mute this really quick. Awesome. Create interactions. He was then able to really tell better stories online.
But she traveled. She said it would be one day.
Now, as Micah is given this opportunity to use this new knowledge and confidence at a new full-time job. So after merits, I was then hired as the lone web designer and front-end developer at this job, and initially started out creating wireframes, as you can see here, on a pad. That's where the idea started. And then I brought it to life using Webflow. So I would go through this process of redesigning, and you can see this is all the iterations that myself and the team went through. All these little tiny rectangles, those are all different designs that I worked on. And we ultimately brought this to life using Webflow. So this was what we brought to life, myself and another developer. Now, that's powerful, but how can more folks get this power and confidence just like I did? You may be asking, can I use Webflow? Is Webflow for me, or who am I? And I'm so glad you asked that question, because I think Webflow is absolutely for us, because it allows us to quickly build websites and e-commerce sites and have these platforms like CMS and marketplaces and design and develop in a visual way. But how do we do this? How do we collaborate? What we're going to do is create our own free account. So definitely thank you for listening. And before I jump in further, are there any questions? Feel free to write them in the chat. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So first thing I want to share is actually having a Webflow project, having a Webflow account and being able to create on the web visually. And to do this, if I go to webflow.com, probably going to need to log out myself. I'm gonna sign out here. What Webflow allows us to do, oh yes, you can absolutely get a recording of this afterwards. Definitely, definitely. So you can, at webflow.com, create an account for free. And this account allows you to create websites visually. And there's limitations with the free account, but this allows you to visually design online. And you can, I want to introduce, after I log in here, be my authenticator, logging in. Perfect. So in your Webflow account, you have the opportunity to create a number of projects, but the free one allows you to have 2 unhosted projects. And you can learn more about the free limitations, but just wanted to show you how your dashboard might look. And the ultimate thing is Webflow University. So if I go to university.webflow.com, I'm going to share this in our chat here for everyone. This is the starting ground for myself. This is where I've learned a lot of the things for what I do in Webflow is the university. So you can see some featured courses here. This is the most recent trending course, and this is what we're going to ultimately talk about today. And these are some new lessons, such as the getting started, elements. You can browse all of these, and learning these things allows us to really be able to understand how Webflow can help us, from the sections to any of the layouts. This course and these lessons greatly help us. But what we're going to talk about today is this new 2021 portfolio course. And so as a new account, as a free account, you can jump in and start using this course right away. So as you can see here, this is the course. It has 21 lessons, and this is what I'm ultimately going to guide us through as far as we can today in the next hour, of how to use this course and how to build in Webflow. So feel free to sign up for your free account. There are some limitations in regards to, and I'll share more about those limitations, but sign up for a free account and allow you to quickly get started. Alrighty. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is creating a hero section. And this is in web design and development. That's that big thing that you might see at the top of a website. Let's see, if we go to apple.com, a hero section for them, this would be their large hero section for the new iPhone 12. And then as you scroll down, there's more content, but what we're going to first create is something like this hero section. So back into our course. What's great about this course is we have clonable items. And so what Webflow allows us to do is, if I click on this clone this project button, it takes us to the showcase. And on the showcase, there are multiple projects that people can use to just see what Webflow does, or clone projects. And the clone project lets you take that project into your own account and do with it whatever you want. And so I'll show us how we can do that. So here on our page here, this portfolio course homepage, I can click on the clone project. I can name this, I like that name, Micah's Dynamite Project. Clicking clone project. And what this is going to do is create a direct duplication of this project. And now I have where this website was started from for this section of the project. So as you can see here, they've built out some of the things already. I'm going to remove this so we can walk through how they built it. But they've built out some of these things, and that's the awesome power of clone projects. And to back up just a little bit here, if I go back to showcase, I want to really show us the power of cloning, because what the showcase has helped me do is when you're on the showcase, so this is your dashboard tag or tab where you can go to all your projects that you build. And if you click on showcase, this is where you can see different projects that have been shared for other people to look at. So this button here lets us see all sites. This one in particular lets us see the sites that are clonable. Clonable sites mean that you can actually take this into your own account. So for instance, if I view this project here, I'm like, wow, that interaction's pretty cool. This whole project's pretty cool. I might want to clone this project and maybe use that interaction, or I can just view the project details and open this in Webflow just to kind of preview what this person did to create this. So previewing this site, as you can see here, I'm in the read-only mode. I'm just previewing what they created. So I can see that they used a grid here, they did some other things, and I can just see and any changes that I make here. So if I say Micah here, this is not going to be saved because this is a read-only. So if I refresh this, because it was a read-only and just a preview, it's going to go back to the way that they had it, residences. And so that's what's awesome about the showcase, is that I can preview projects and I can also clone projects.
Yep.
So,
Easy.
so back into the project that we just cloned here. This is the start of our 2021 portfolio course. And so again, there's 21 lessons here, takes us and guides us through creating a homepage, project pages, contact pages. But what we're going to focus on is creating this homepage. So I'm here on the canvas and I'm going to remove some of this stuff. So I just selected this section, pressing the delete key. So now my body here, this area is completely blank. I'm just going to give us some of the lay of the land. This might kind of look like, this kind of looks like kind of Photoshop. It kind of has a Photoshop look, a Figma look. And I'm chatting and talking, but I want to make sure, can everyone see my screen? I want to make sure if you can give me a thumbs up in the chat or a yes in the chat, just want to make sure everyone can see my screen. Awesome, awesome. I can see it. Perfect. So this is a completely blank canvas. And to give us a lay of the land, on the left side, we have things like the add panel, and we have this thing called symbols. We'll chat more about symbols. We have the navigator. This navigator shows us all the things that we create and place on our canvas on this particular page. And we have the pages panel that shows all the pages that we've created. And we have the CMS collections, and we'll chat more about that also. The e-commerce tab, and we'll get there as well, because that's showing the power of adding e-commerce. Then we have our assets panel. This is where all the images and assets and PDFs, text files, these are uploaded here. And lastly, we have our settings panel. So we can see our search settings and our backup settings. So that's the left side. Here in the middle, this big middle area, this is our canvas. And this is where we can add and drag any elements onto the canvas. And so if I click on this add panel here, drag in this button, the awesome thing and the thing that might kind of throw us off, you might think if I drop this button element here in the center, it's going to stay in the center. But as you can see, it jumps all the way up here to the top left. And that's because what this canvas is a direct emulation of HTML and CSS properties. So if I look in my navigator, this button is very similar if you've coded before of like writing HTML elements, such as paragraphed elements. You can put divs and sections here. So it follows the same process. And over here and to the right, this is our style panel. And this panel allows me, for instance, if I select this element, this style panel allows me to, if I change this width from auto to 100%, it follows along the lines of CSS. So it went 100% of the parent element. So the stuff that we create here is more powerful than a Photoshop, more powerful than a Figma, if you know about Figma or Sketch, because this is directly coding on the page. And we can see this if I go down here to my bottom left, click on CSS Preview. I can see this is the code that I would write for this button. It would be button, curly brackets with 100%. And so that's what I would normally write if I was writing this code out. Awesome. I'm going to remove that and I'm going to clean up my styles here, going a little quickly. But before continuing, I want to check the chat to see if there are any questions that we might have about what we just covered. Awesome, awesome. None yet, none yet. Okay, perfect. And also want to ask, it sounded like some of us are moving around and some of us might be at the house and at our homes and in front of our computers. Want to ask, feel free to give a thumbs up if you're able to have access and create your own free account, because I would love to walk through this process with someone here on the chat. But if none of us are able to, I'd be happy to just share as well. But if you are, feel free to give me a thumbs up, and I love to pace it along with somebody so that we can learn together. Awesome, setting up in a minute. Can you reshare the link? I can absolutely reshare the link. So going to webflow.com, and I'm going to show what this would look like. If you're creating a new account, and so I'm sharing in the chat the Webflow URL, webflow.com. If you're creating a new account, you would click here on this Get Started. And you can continue with an email here or sign in with Google. So I'll act as if I'm signing or creating with a new email. And I'm trying to think of an email that I haven't used. Let's see, I think this one I have not used before. And creating a new password. Please don't check out my password. Oh, that one didn't work. See here, that one should, invalid password. Let's get this rolling. Now I'm gonna have to make a fake one, test. I can get my password rolling. Oh, this might be an account I've already created. That might be why it's giving me issues. Ah, yes. So let me restart this. I think I've already created an account for this. Get started, perfect. And I think I haven't created an account for this one. So I'll do that. info@micah.ryan.com. Hope is awesome. Create a new account. So this is a brand new project. Nice. So as this loads my new account, feel free to do the same. And what you're going to see is it's going to take you into your dashboard once this completes here. Boom, 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 boom. Awesome. Going to sign in. My name, web designer, client as a freelancer, never built. And we're going to do an e-commerce store. And then it drops me right into a blank project here. So this project here has some tutorials that we can walk through, and you can see some of these, and it shows you some of the guidelines that we can see. And it takes us through this process of showing the add panel, dragging in the containers, and we can also see all the elements that can be added into it. And so it just helps guides us through this new process. So I'm adding in different elements like headings, add heading there. I double click into this, I can change it, test, test. What else does it add? And I can add in paragraphs. All this is available in our new project. So I'm going to stop this and head back into, click outside when you're done. So now that I've finished doing this, just wanted to hop back in to what our dashboard looks like. So stop this tutorial. I'm going to delete this project here. So with a blank project, this is what it would look like. And if I go into Learn, to the portfolio course, if I start this course, I can then see under the hero section course here, this is where I can clone this project. So it's going to take me to this project here. I can clone it. Oh, first need to verify my email. So once I verify my email, I can then clone this project. Awesome. So back into our project here. Awesome. Awesome. We got folks rolling. Awesome. Alrighty. So I know we only have about an hour of time. So I want to kind of take the time to make sure that we understand what we're building here on the web. So what this canvas uses is the box model. And so what the box model is it's designing on the web with the idea that everything that we create follows along with styles that you can add to boxes, and you can nest these boxes as well. So if I go into my add panel, again, what we're going to try and create is this hero section. So I'm gonna kind of scrub through this video so we can see what we're creating here. So what we're ultimately going to create, if we didn't see it previously, is this hero section. Back into our project. First thing I want to show and talk about is if I click on the navigator, again, this is like the tree of what everything is nested inside. We have at the very top the body tag, and this body tag is kind of what holds everything inside of it. And what we can do with this body tag, if I click in the selector field over here in the top right, is find the body all pages tag. And what this body all pages tag does is it allows us to have changes that we make on this tag be reflected on every page. So anything that I change here will be reflected on every page. So for instance, if I scroll down my style panel and change my background from this dark color to maybe this red, or let's see, maybe I want kind of this bluish background. If I go into my pages panel, create a new page and call it new page, when I open it, it's going to have that same background because it's using the same body tag at the very top. each page starts off with a body tag, and that's how the web is created. Every page starts off with a body tag. And again, if I click in the selector field, click on body all pages, this is where I can change those things like the background color and my text color here. There's no text on the page yet, but this is where it will be. Let's go back to like this dark gray again and go back to our home page. Alrighty, so what we want to create again is that hero section. So first thing we want to do is go into our add panel, find our section, and the section is a container. It's a div block that we can put stuff inside. And this section is automatically 100%. It fills the body tag here. And what I want to go ahead and do is let's give this section a class name. So this is something that you can learn in Webflow University. So right now I hopped over into Webflow University. I'm going to search classes. And you can learn more about classes and how they're used. And if you're a developer, designer on the web, you might probably have a good handle on those as well. But ultimately what classes allow us to do is it allows us to create styles on an element and then reuse those styles on other elements. So for instance, back in our project, if I name this and give it a class name of, let's give it a class name of section, any styles that I complete on this section class will be able to be reused in other elements that have the same section class name. So if I drag and add padding, which is adding space on the inside of this element, if I, let's say, add 50 pixels here and holding down Option, I can also do the padding on the other side. You can see this numbers are matching holding down Option. So let's add 60 pixels of padding. And you can't necessarily really see what that looks like. So what I'm going to do is let's throw in a container here. So this container is an element. So in our add panel, I just added in a container into my section. I'm going to go back so we can see it clearly. So I'm going to grab this, just drag it into our section. And a container is an element that has a max width. And as you can see, it's right in the center. It has a max width with margin auto on either side, so it centers it. If I click back on our section, let's see how this padding works. So as you can see, adding padding is what adds space on the inside of this element. And adding margin adds space to the outside of this element. And so that's what margin and padding is adding space. Padding is adding space to the inside. Margin is adding space to the outside. So now we have this container in the center here. And what we want to do is just add some text inside of this. So I'm going to go into my add panel, go to my text element, drag this text block here, and we can say welcome. So that's my text block. So again, with my section selected, we can see how this padding is moving things around. Let's take this back to 60. And because this text block, so if we look in our tree here, so we have our section, which has a container inside of that, which has a text block inside of that, we can see that our container is holding that element right here towards the center. And we can change the max width. So right now this has a default max width. We can change that max width here in the size of our container element. So in our style panel with our container selected, over here in our style panel, let's change this max width to 1200 pixels. So as you can see, that container is now larger, but it still stays towards the center. Alrighty. The next thing we want to do for our hero section is let's add this heading here. And I want to make sure that I added inside of our container, right beneath our text block. And let's see here. Designing, I want to say designing and developing to make lasting changes for us all. And I like this, it's pretty good. And I want to, let's see, change the width of this. And so to do that, I'm going to go over here into my width, and maybe 600 pixels might be good. I can maybe change this a little bit more. So I'm clicking option here. Let's see, I like this here for us. I think 480 is perfect, 480. Designing and developing to make lasting changes for us all. And I can also type this in if I want to 50 pixels or 500 pixels. Awesome. So now we kind of got the general layout. And again, if we want to see the code that we're writing, if I'm, for instance, have my section selected, going over into the this question mark here, if I can click on it, boop, there we go. CSS Preview, get my section selected. I can see right here, this is the code that we've written. Padding top, padding bottom. And if I select my heading, I can see the width that I've added, width, that's 500 pixels. And if I select my container, I can see the max width that I've written. And all this is code that we would have written by hand, but we did it all visually using the style panel. And that's what's the power of Webflow, is that we're actually coding, but doing it visually. Alrighty, so back into our design. So I'm looking at this here. The next thing we want to do is add in this image, this hero image. Oh, before I do that, I do want to show how we can change some of the fonts that we have on our project. So with in my navigator, with my body tag selected, clicking on the selector, going to the body all pages tag. And what I want to do is just show how we can change the fonts. So in this font drop down, we have a number of things that we can change it to. Impact, which is not the best looking, bitter, which looks bitter. But what we're going to stick with is just enter. We're going to stick with enter here. You can also change the font size for all paragraph text here as well. So if I want to say, make all my paragraph text 16 pixels, I can do that here. You might have saw the welcome change. If I want it to be really tiny, 5 pixels. It's too hard to see. I'm gonna make that back to 14. And I can also change the color of all of my text here. Again, this is in the body all pages tag. Awesome. Now for my heading, I do want to change this, and let's change this to DM serif display. And we're going to use the normal font. And I want to change this from 500, change this to maybe 600 to get it all on one line. Awesome. So we've visually developed this text here at the top. Now let's add in that image. So in our add panel, let's go to our media section to image. What I want to do, I want this image to be full width. But if I place it into my container, click choose image. Let's find our hero image here, if I can find it. Is it in here? There it is. This is our hero image. This is currently being constrained because if I look into my navigator, it's inside that container, and that container had a max width. I don't want it to be constrained. So what I'm going to do is just take it outside of the container and have it sit in this section. So now it goes all the way across full width. And if I want to make sure that it does, I can say 100%. I can type here, 100%. Make sure that it's full width. Click in preview. And so this is getting pretty close to what we want. I'm going to add some margin here just to kind of move. So again, margin is the space that we add to the outside of an element. Padding is the space that we add to the inside. And I want just some margin. So I'm going to reset this, change this margin to, let's say 50. Just 50 is too much. Say 40 maybe. Seems about okay. But this at the top is too much. 0 pixels there at the top. And so, yeah, this is our landing page so far. And so what I could do here is using my staging domain. If I go to publish, each project has a staging domain that we can publish to. So again, the difference between a Figma or Photoshop is that when we publish, we're actually publishing our code to the web. So if I go and visit this, this is an actual website, and I'm going to share it in the chat here. So if you go to this website, it will load wherever you are, at your home, on your phone, wherever you are, and it will load for you there. As you can see, it's with what we've done, it's fairly responsive. That container keeps everything centered because it has a max width, but then it stops once we get here. And that image responds well because we have it set to responsive, or we have it set to a width of 100%. So it'll be 100% of that section there. So that is the biggest difference, is that we are actually coding this. And if we just want to preview this, preview is slightly different. We won't be publishing, and it just lets us preview this while we're still in the designer. Awesome. So I know I've covered a lot, but wanted to open up if there are any questions, any questions that anyone wanted to ask before we continued on and the next thing that we are going to chat about is, so we chatted about class names, container, we're going to chat about the CMS content management system. But before we do that, I want to open up for any questions. So the chat is open. Got some pop-up trying it out. Is that an issue? Great question. Pop-up. So is it the tutorial pop-up that's stopping you? Got some pop-up trying it on Firefox. Is that an issue? So if you are having a pop-up issue, what I would suggest, more like a warning. Oh, great question. Let's see here. And I love, if you have, would you be able to share your screens? And I'd love to check it out if you can share your screen. I'd love to learn and see together. Oh, awesome. Moved it out already. Perfect, perfect. Okay. Awesome. I duplicated it. Great question. Thank you, Timmy. So the question was, I duplicated a heading tag and I can't change the font style independently. So if this is the power of class names, so let's do this here. So the question was, I duplicated a heading tag. So what I'm doing here is Command C to copy and then Command V to paste. And as you can see, each of these, I'm clicking on them separately, but each of these has the same heading class name here. So if I make a change to this one, it's going to make a change to that one as well. What's an easier way of seeing it? If I make a color change here, you can see all the classes with that heading tag makes the same change. Now, if I want them to work independently, this is where we can do two different things. And this is how you can think like you're an architect, like you're building something amazing. So class names allows you to reuse this style. Now, say for instance, you want this one to have the same base class, like you want it to have the same margin on the bottom, the same width, but you want this one to be slightly different, just a little slightly different. You can add a combo class. And so say for instance, I want to change this to whatever combo class you want to name. I'm just going to call this bright color. So I'm adding a combo class to it. So now if I select this top one, we can see it doesn't have the combo class because we're only working with this element. So this element has the combo class. Oops, moved that down, didn't want to do that. So this element has the combo class. Now, if I change under typography, the color for this one, it only changes for this one with that combo class. Now, what's cool about combo classes is that if this element, this element that has a heading class, I can absolutely add that combo class. So I clicked on the selector field and we can see there's an existing combo class that we just created called bright color. So you can see now that it's using the same combo class for the change color. And if I remove that combo class, so I clicked into the selector field, removed it, delete, it uses the initial heading one. But now back to, this is the one with the heading one, this is the one with the combo class. Any changes that I make here that don't affect that combo class, like the color. So if I change the font size to 50, both of them will change the font size to 50 because they're both using the base heading class. But if I change this one to 60, only that one will get larger because it's using a more specific combo class, So that's how you can duplicate, that's how you can use classes, and that's how you can use combo classes. It's extremely powerful. I'm gonna back out of this stuff here. Great question, and thank you for asking. So again, this follows along the same lines. I'm gonna add that stuff back in. This follows along the same line. So if we preview this, of coding. So with our CSS preview, we can see here this combo class, and that's how you would write this out. So heading, that's this base class, and the combo class is heading bright color. And we can see here we change the color and the font size for it. So that's exactly what we would do when we code this. Great question. Awesome. Oh my, so we have about 40 minutes and I want to make sure that we get to the power stuff. Some of the things that I hope and I know, at least it did for me, it blew my mind. Hopefully it blows your mind, or at least get you thinking about what you can do. What we're going to talk about is, I'm gonna quickly go over adding navigation just to show us how we can do it. But the ultimate thing in the time that we have available to us is using, if I speed up here, so all this content, the learnings that we're learning here is available in this portfolio course. Feel free to follow along in this course, but we're going to learn how to use the collections to use dynamic content. Dynamic content is, if you've built on WordPress, it's like creating a blog post. So if you want to have blog posts on your blog page, but you also want to have it on the bottom of your featured page, but you also want that dynamic content on the home page as well. That's what dynamic content allows you to do. It allows you to enter data into a data management system, a content management system, and then you can place it wherever you like on your website. And so that's the power that I want to show us, as well as the ultimate power of e-commerce, which is very similar to collections. But first, I'm going to quickly go through this. So this is being recorded, but I'm going to quickly show us how we can add a navigation. So in our add panel, there is actually a navigation element that we can drag in here. If I go into my components down here, I can see there's a nav bar, and I can go ahead and drag this. I want this right at the top of my body here. So this nav bar comes with some pre-made stuff. It comes with some pre-made stuff. Oh, hey, Achiever, thanks for joining us.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah. So it comes with some pre-made things. And one thing that I didn't chat about, but is super powerful for web design visually, is up here at the top, we have these breakpoints. And breakpoints are, so if I come here to the edge of my canvas and drag this down, this is, I'm just kind of scrubbing through the desktop breakpoint. So it goes from as wide as our desktop is all the way down to 992 pixels. So that's how we can design for the desktop breakpoint. And the way this works in Webflow is that breakpoints, desktop styles apply to all breakpoints unless they're edited at larger or smaller breakpoints. So any changes that I make here at the top will be reflected in the tablet view. It will also be reflected in the mobile view and also the mobile portrait view. So any changes that I make here on the desktop will reflect all the way down. But changes that I make on the mobile landscape will only be here for the mobile landscape. So as you can see here, when we get here to kind of this smaller mobile landscape, kind of as you can see at the very bottom, it shows us what the 480 pixels might relate to, the LG G5 or the Galaxy Note 5. This is their breakpoint here. If I want to change in between this breakpoint, say I want to change this heading size, it's like, that's a little too large. It's hard for people to read, especially when we get to these smaller breakpoints. It cuts off to make. What I can do is change this width to auto. So now, instead of it being like we had here, where we just wanted it to be 600 pixels, when I get to my tablet view, it goes to auto. So now this auto allows it to be full width and it wraps the text around. But this is only, again, for the mobile breakpoint for this particular one. So even when I go to tablet uses the 600, but if I go to the mobile landscape, it changes to auto. Now, if I go to mobile portrait, what we can guess is that it also, because it's a smaller breakpoint, it's going to use the same auto. So as we can see, if we click on this, this value comes from the heading mobile landscape view. And that's what this is saying here. So that's what's really great about this, is that we're able to visually design. So previously, if we had to code this, see here, I think this might show here in that preview. So if I have this highlighted, CSS Preview, heading. So it shows that this is on that small breakpoint. But typically what we had to do is we'd have to create media queries. And that was, again, if you've coded before, that is something that you would have to manage, but you're able to do it here visually. All righty, so we talked about breakpoints. If you want to learn more, you can go to Webflow University, type in breakpoints, and learn more about breakpoints here. So this is a lesson about breakpoints and how they work for us. Adding larger breakpoints, scaling the canvas, you can learn everything you need here. All righty, back into our project. Let's add a logo. So I'm going into my assets. I want to add a logo right there into our brand. See here. So in my assets, I'm gonna drag this SVG into here. And it's kind of large. So what I'm going to do is give this a class name of logo. I want to reduce the width to, let's say, 200 pixels. Awesome. Now it's butting up all the way up there to the top. Let's take a look at these nav links. So these nav links have some pre-made pre-made default padding on it. They're using 20 by 20. So let's do the same here. 20, perfect. So now it kind of matches our nav links here. And I also want to change this nav bar came with a default gray background. Let's give this nav bar a class name if I want to use this nav bar later. And I'm actually going to make this transparent so it matches. So what I did is I just drugged this opacity down to 0, or I can type in 0 here. Now I can't see my text link, so let's go into our nav links. Let's give each one of these a class name. So I'm typing in nav link, and let's change this to like a white color. And the reason why these didn't change is they're not yet using that class name. So I'm gonna click on this, type in the selector, click on the selector, find my existing class of nav link, and then it changes. Selector, nav link changes. Now, anyone, again, using that class name will use the same styles that we add into the style panel. So that's how we quickly created a navigation. And this nav bar that you pulled from the add panel, as you can see here, it has some pre-made components such as this drop-down menu. So you can use this drop-down menu to show on different breakpoints. Right now, it automatically shows on tablet, and you can learn more about this as you dig into the nav bar here. Alrighty, so we have about 30 minutes left. And what I really want to show is using data in our website. Oh, but one thing, this looks really weird. I just noticed this. This container is different than this container. So that container that we created, we did some changes here. We made that max width to 1200. Let's go into our navigator, select. So this is our tree here. If I select my nav bar, we can see it doesn't yet use that container class name. So let's start typing in container. I can see the existing class. I'm gonna select that. And now it has the same width. And to make it actually equal to that, I'm going to remove the padding on that right side there. And I'll keep the padding on that one, just to make it exactly flush with that. Alrighty, so now we're going to chat about using dynamic content. So over into the left side here, under CMS, we can create a collection, a CMS collection. This is where we create dynamic content. So clicking this here to create a new collection, what we're going to create is a portfolio collection. And this is like a projects collection of different projects that we might build. So first thing I'm going to do is just name this portfolio, or I can name it projects. Projects might be better. And what this is going to create, it's going to create a collection URL, very similar to like blog / San Francisco. If you write a blog post about San Francisco, each collection item will have this, the start of their collection URL. Now, the dynamic content that we want to create is, I should have wrote this down, I didn't, but let's think here. So each project is going to have a name, that's the basic info. It's going to have a slug, that's the name that we give our project. And we also want to have our project have a hero image, or an image at the very top of our page that we can also maybe use on other pages. So I'm going to go to custom fields here, and I can either add new field here or add field here. And this is where we have some options here, some field type options. And so we were talking about creating a hero image, or an image that we can use that highlights our project. So we can use this image field. Clicking on that, now I can name it. Each one needs a label. So I'll name this hero image, or main image might be a better name. Main image. Save. So that's our first dynamic field type. And what else do I want to have here? I also want to add my field type. Well, I want each one I want to be able to tell when I actually created this. So I can use this date time for created on date, if I can spell correctly, created date. And what else do I want to add here? I want to also add a rich text field. So this rich text field is extremely powerful. It is what you would use in a number of blog posts. It's like the rich text field lets you add in text, images, I can add in links. This rich text field allows me to add the description that I would love to use for my project. So I'm gonna use this rich text field and name it description, because it's going to let me do that there. And the last thing is, I was just thinking, now there might be, so I'm in the add new field type. There might be times that I want to only show featured projects on the homepage. So, you know, sometimes on my blog page, I want on my projects page, I want all my projects to be shown on my projects page, but on my home page, I might only want to feature certain projects. I don't want all my projects on my home page. I only want a few of them, and they're going to be maybe 3 that I like, maybe 3 out of 5 I want on my projects page. So to do that, I can select this switch here. And this switch is like a yes, no, if you're an end developer, or true or false. Meaning like if the switch is toggled on, that's yes. If it's off, it's no. And so we can use this to filter out items in our collection. Now I'll show us more that here in a bit. So let's add this switch and we'll name it featured, because that's what it's going to it's going to be our featured switch. Awesome. So I've done enough here. I've created the foundation of my dynamic content. These are all the fields. So let's create this collection. And to speed this up so we don't have to watch me add in all this content, I'm going to use the sample content here. So I'm going to add in 5 items. So these 5 items are just dummy content. Again, for us, I would say that we would make and add this our own, but you can see this dummy content. It's just content that is automatically added in. The name doesn't make sense. The image is random, the date is random, and this description, as we can see here in our rich text, is random as well. And as you can see, some of these have the featured on and some of them have it off. And I want to make sure that at least 3 have it on. So right now only 1 does. Let's make sure this one does. I'm going to save that. And let's make sure this one does. I'm going to save that. Now, you don't have to necessarily create dummy content. If you, excuse me, going to go back into our CMS. If you want to create your dynamic content from scratch, what you can do is click here on this new button here, and this lets us create a new project. So all those field types that I created, I can enter in my information here that I want, such as the best project I've ever made. That might be the name of this project. And I can drag in my image here, and as I can see, this is the slug for that. I can change my slug if I want to. My creation date, when this project was created. Say, for instance, I'm a scientist and I created this in the future. So February 25, 2022. I don't know, maybe I went to the future, and I can use this description and my featured. But I'm not going to create that, so discard the changes. Awesome. So that's how we create CMS collection. Now we have 20 minutes. Before I go on, any questions? I know I might have covered a lot, but any questions right here at this point before we put this content onto our page? So I'm gonna drag up our chat here just in case. Any questions? And again, thank y'all so much for sticking with me. I know we're covering a lot, but I'm really excited about what we're learning. Feel free to ask any questions. Awesome. Thank you. So again, if you do have any questions, feel free to add them in the chat. Now the dynamic content. So we've got our page here. And so what we want to do, let's go ahead. We've already learned a bit about adding in our sections. Let's add in another section here beneath that one. So I can actually use my navigator, dragging this section here. Let's add it. Actually, I want to add it beneath this one. Let's use that section class name. I'm going a little bit quicker because we kind of know this. And going into, let's drag in a container into that new section down here. And let's give that container the same container class name. And let's use the same text. So I'm going to copy this, Command C, going into this container, Command V, selecting my heading, Command C, and then right underneath, Command V. And let's change this to these are the featured projects. Awesome. So if we look into our navigator, we can see this is what we just created. Section, container, text block above it, and the heading beneath that. Now, what we want to do now is add in this dynamic content. So if we go into our add panel here, scrolling down just a bit, under CMS, there's this thing called collection list. And what a collection list is allows you to connect your dynamic content, the stuff that we created in our CMS, connect it to this list. And so it's going to, if I grab this, drag this in here right underneath my heading. We have this thing here that looks very odd in purple, but what we can do is select the source. We can select the source of this dynamic list. And as we can see from our CMS collections, I have the option to connect it to my projects. So with that connected, we can see here, this is kind of a rough setup of our projects. And there's nothing in there because there's no content yet in there. It's just a collection list and it's pulling from our dynamic content. Now, to have our dynamic content shown here, what we can do is use elements in our add panel and then connect those elements to our content, to our dynamic content. So what I want to build is something probably very simple, but you can build cards here. You can do a bunch of things, but I'm going to build something very simple. I'm thinking out loud here. I'm going to show us the power of grid very quickly. And I'm going to have the name of my project. And what else did we have in our collection list? We had the name, main image. I want to have the creation date underneath the name of my project. And on the right side of all of that, I want to have the image. Okay. So to make that setup, what I can do is use a div block here. I can use a div block. And I'm going to drag this div block right into my collection item here. So that div block, I drug it into my collection item over here in my navigator. You can see it's in my collection item. And that div block is in each of my items. So it's being reflected in each item. So any change or anything that I make to one, it's going to be shown in everything in my collection list. So let's name this project grid. So I'm going to make this into a grid. So we can name this project grid. Under layouts, we have this option to use grid, CSS grid. And if you're not yet familiar with grid, it's a tool. It's like Flexbox. It's like any other CSS properties that allows us to create grids on the web. So if I click on this, I get some default stuff here. So I have pretty close to what I want, but I don't want this bottom line here. So we have 2 columns. That's these 2 things. That's perfect. But I don't want this bottom row. So I'm going to delete this bottom row. So we currently have our grid and it's looking good. But now what I want to do is add in the name. That's what I wanted. And I wanted the date on the left side. And on the right side, I want the image. So name and date on the left. And on the right side, I want the image. Yeah. Name, date, and actually I want a link. I want a button link on the left and the image on the right. That's what I will do. So for the name, let's add in a text block. I'm going to place it right here. And you might be thinking, that's odd. All of these have the same text block, but that's because they're all using the same thing and we have yet to connect it to our dynamic content. So if I click on this, click on any of these text blocks, over into our element settings, I can then use the items. These are in our items. I can then use the dynamic content by clicking this, get text from projects. So if I click that, I get this drop-down field and I can get the name here. So now each one now has its own name. Let's drag in another text block, place it right underneath. Actually, what I want to do is if I go back here, so the way grid works is I want to place my text block into a div block. I'm going to drag this div block in here, place my text block into the div block. Nice. And I also want to drag in another div block. So drag this text block into this div. Perfect. And let's place another div block here into my navigator, div block below that. And that's where we'll add our image. So we have our name here. Let's give our project title a class name. Let's change the height, excuse me, the size here, so it's large enough. And let's add in another text block here. So the way I nested this is I put it inside a div block here. And what I want to grab is get the text and go into and find the create date. That's from our dynamic content. So as you can see, each one has its own created date. And with this selected, over into my grid child settings, I want to maybe center this and also center align. Awesome. Now with my div block selected, let's change this name to project name. Let's add some padding here. Just add a bit of padding here. So now we have our objects here connected dynamically. Let's make this date smaller. Can change this date to let's make this 12 pixels. And we can even reduce the opacity to kind of make this a nice design. And right below that, let's also add in our button. So there's a button element here, and can add it to any one of these. If I add it beneath, if I can get this to go in correctly, drag in my button, there we go. That'll be easier in the navigator to place it right beneath my date. There we go. So you might have seen it was trying to figure out grid. Are you placing it outside? Are you placing it inside? And if I was having issues like that, I would just say, put it right into my project name here, which makes it easier. And this link, I want this to go, it's in my link settings. So as you can see, I have link settings here. I want this to go to the current project. So the current project is going to be the template page for this project. And we can learn more about collection lists and collection items over in University. So if I type in collection lists, I can see and learn more about how to use collection lists in University here. But so right now we have that set up. I'm going to style this a little bit. Give it, I do like that color, but I don't like the button color. So let's change this button color here. Awesome. And inside of here, let's drag in an image element, because this is what we're going to use for our main image. So we drug that into our collection list. Again, it's in our collection list. Place it into this div block here. And let's get image from. So with my image selected, get image from main image. So as we can see, it's using the main image for each of these projects. Each one has a different one. And I'm going to add a little bit of margin in between each of these here. Perfect. So that's how you can use dynamic content. And you don't necessarily need to use grid. You can use Flexbox. So as you can see, if I clicked on Flexbox, it changes my layout. If I use inline block, it also changes my layout and changes it for all of them. But any layout that you want to create, you can use the styles here and use nesting to create the type of layout that you want. And go back here to my grid. Awesome. All right, so we have 10 minutes. And what I want to show now is e-commerce, because that's kind of what we came here for. And so what e-commerce is it is using very similar, the same stuff as the collection. So in e-commerce, we have a setup guide, and I'll just breeze through the setup guide, but the setup guide allows you to add your business address, which you will need for your taxes and tax calculations, your currency that you want to use. So if I add in my business name and business address, San Francisco, CA, and I think if I remember correctly, actually I'm going to use Missouri because I do know that one. Perfect, St. Louis, Missouri. Type this in, perfect. and I enter in my language, continue. I can then set up the other things for my business, like my payment processor. We can connect to Stripe or PayPal. Checkout, we can enable checkout once we enable and add an e-commerce site plan. So any e-commerce will need an e-commerce site plan. But outside of that, what I want to show is how we can add in our e-commerce products. So our products is very similar to our collection. So going into our products, you can do the exact same thing. Clicking on this cog here is setting up the field types that you want. And it comes with some very base ones, and you can choose different types. So if it's a physical type or a digital type, it'll change things here for us. Or if it's a service, it'll change things for us. But let's say we have a physical product that we want to sell. And with that, I can then enter, save this collection, add some dummy content in here. So I have dummy content. This looks to be a gorgeous, fresh computer. Added a new media. They gave it a price of $85 for it and added the shipping and weight and things of that nature for us. I'm gonna save that. But what we can do is very similar to this, is we can add in our e-commerce. I can find it here. Awesome. We can add in our, double checking here if I'm doing this correctly. Perfect. So I'm going to create another section here, right beneath this, dragging this in very quickly into our navigator as the last section. And I'm gonna use quick find very quickly to add in a container, give it a class name of container, give our section a class name of section, and we've already done this before. But what we wanna do is, just like we did for this collection list up here, drag in another collection. And what we want to do is connect this, the source, to our products. So instead of connecting it to our projects, we connect this to our products. And this would take us to our products landing page. And we haven't been able to chat about these template pages, and I know we have 5 minutes, but what I want to share is what these template pages are. So template pages are the base page for any of your dynamic content. So if I go into this projects template page, it's going to be blank. We've yet to add anything here. And we have 5 minutes, so I'm going to quickly create what maybe our template page for our projects could look like. So I'm going to select this nav bar, and to make this quick, I want to make this a symbol. And symbols are awesome and very powerful. And if I go into university, you can learn more about symbols. And what symbols allow us to do is to make reusable components that reflect themselves on each page that they use. So if you have a symbol of a nav bar or of a card, you can use that symbol, that component on other pages. So let's make this nav bar with this nav bar selected. So I have it selected. Let's go over to our symbols panel here, clicking that. And I want to create a new symbol. I want to name this navigation. That's what I have selected. So this thing turned green and it's now a symbol. And I also want to, let's quickly make this section here also a symbol. Hero section. And I don't have a footer, but if I did have a footer, I would make that a symbol as well. But what I'm going to do is go to my projects page so that we can see how these links go to a project page. Because if I go now and use these links, it's going to go to that project page. But as you can see, it's blank here. So let's go to our projects page out of the preview, and let's add in those symbols. So I'm going to go to the symbols elements here, the symbols panel. I'm going to drag in my navigation. It's pretty cool. So now this symbol that I created is reflected on all pages. So if I make a change here, if I click into my symbol and I change this to projects, if I want to change this link to project, when I go back to my home page where that symbol also lives, it's also going to have that name there as well, because it also is using the same symbol. back to my projects template. So this again is a template page. Going to add in that hero section. So now each template, so I'm going to go through each of these. Each of them are using the same stuff here, which is okay, but kind of weird. So what we want to do is below all of this, let's add in another section going into a navigator. Let's add in a container going into my navigator. And beneath this, I want to have that heading that I had. And so I'm going to drag in my heading tag. This will be my name. I can connect this, since I'm on a template page, I can connect this to the dynamic content for this template page. So I can connect this to my name. So now each page, if I go here in the top left, each page will reflect that content that I've connected to my dynamic content. And we also had a rich text element. If I can find it very quickly, I'm rushing. I'll put this beneath there. And I'm going to connect this to my description. So now if I go between each one will have its own description. So to bring this home, I know we have 8 minutes. To bring this home, if I click on these buttons that I've linked to my template pages, my current project, so this one is this one here. If I click on it, I can see it has the content for this here. Hey, nice to meet you. Awesome, awesome. So I know we've reached the end here. One last thing for our developers here. If you're interested and you upgraded your account, you can actually export this content, everything except dynamic pages and dynamic content. You can export pages as clean HTML and CSS code. So as you can see here, it's making this, and I can prepare zip and export this and say I want to create this landing page and pass it off to a developer who wants to add it as a WordPress template or make it into some app that uses HTML and CSS. I can use this zip file, and I'll download this here, and I can pass this content over to a developer, and they can use this code here, the HTML, the CSS, they can use that wherever they like. So I know I'm over time here, but just wanted to say again, thank you so very much for the time, and so honored. But I wanted to open the floor for any questions. I know we went through a lot, but we just wanted to share any questions that we might have, and also wanted to note we can continue building this out using the portfolio course, but want to open up for any questions. I'll mute myself so I can open up.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Micah, for the wonderful presentation. So if you have any question, you can just pop off mute and ask your question, if you have any question at all.
Okay, hi, good evening.
Good evening, good evening.
Yeah, I was wondering how, if I'm creating a template with WordPress or I'm working with a site with WordPress, how do I bring in the CSS and HTML code exported by Webflow? How do I bring that one into my WordPress website?
Great question, great question. So there's actually a plugin called Pages. So if you use the Pages Webflow, and I'll share this in the chat, Pages allows you to drag in Webflow Pages. There it is. It's a WordPress plugin. This plugin allows you to create in Webflow and then pull those pages into a WordPress installation. So I'm going to share this in the chat, John, for us. And I don't think I'm sharing my screen. So let me share my screen because I'm talking about it, but not sharing my screen. So let me share my screen again. Awesome. So this is what I was talking about, but no one could see. This is the plugin called Webflow Pages. And this allows you to design visually in Webflow, and then push those into WordPress. There's also a Webflow to WordPress template created by Udesly. Udesly is an amazing company that is teamed up. And what you can do is with Webflow, you can do a Webflow to WordPress, create awesome WordPress themes with Webflow. And so I'm gonna share both of these links for us and this is an amazing opportunity. So let's share this in the chat here. This is the Udesly one, and also going to share this one as well. Great question, John. Any other questions?
Thank you, Mika.
Yeah.
Sorry, I also wanted to ask, what are the differences between the free version of Webflow and the paid version?
Great question, great question. Let me double check that I am unmuted. I am. Awesome. Sharing my screen again. So the free version allows a lot of things, but it mainly lets us kind of view and test out Webflow, but you can also within the free account use client billing to connect and have someone else pay for your hosting site plan. But to kind of, instead of talking about it, let's go to plans, Webflow, and we can talk and see the pricing here. So going to account plans, as we can see here, the free starter account allows for 2 unhosted projects. You can add client billing, what I was talking about. Client billing lets you connect. So say for instance, you have Amazon. Amazon's your client and they say, John, we want you to create this site, but we don't want you to pay for the hosting of it. We'll pay for the hosting. What you can do is set up and enable client billing and they can pay for the site plan instead of you having to pay for the site plan. So what that allows you to do is connect site plan to your project without having to pay for it yourself. You also have free staging. Now, the upgraded account plans allows you to do account specific things, such as exporting code like we were talking about. If you want to export code to use it in an Android app or something of that nature, this is what the light account plan allows us to do. You can also do project transfers. So someone else here who might have a Webflow project wants to transfer a project to you. You can do that with the light account plan. And the pro account plan allows us to do site password protection. So you can do password protection of a site. So then someone will have to use a password to log in. That's the account plans. These are account specific things that we want to do. Now, there's a separate between account plan and a site plan. Site plans are for individual projects. Like this thing that we created here, this is an individual project. If I go into my project settings, I can then select a site plan under hosting. Site plans allow us to do a few things. CMS site plan allows us to add a custom domain and have these options for our site. 2,000 CMS items, form submissions, a plethora of other things. Excuse me. So up into our site plans, we can see here, and I'll share this link for the pricing page, the different site plans that you can use for each individual project. So these are all the different things. I won't go into detail here to open up for more questions, but these are the individual pricing for the site plan. So there's account plans and there's site plans. I'm gonna share this in the chat. Great question, John.
Thanks.
Yeah. With all that said, you can, with your free account, still create using the portfolio as your course guide. You can use and create and not connect it to a site plan and just use the staging domain. Like if you wanted to just use the staging domain that we shared, which has .webflow.io, you can do that and not connect a custom domain. Site plans allow you to connect a custom domain, like this project here that I've created called Create Something. It's connected to a custom domain. So then when I go to this, create something.ltd, it's going to open this Webflow project and it's connected to a custom domain that I have here. It has some 3D stuff here, but yeah. So that's what SitePlan allows you to do. But you can absolutely use the staging domain if you want to. Any other questions?
Is anyone asking any other question? If you want to ask, you can just pop off mute, or you can drop your question in the chat. Okay, Timmy says yes now. Well, I think if there are no more questions, we should be bringing this to an end. Thank you so much, Micah, for jumping on the call and taking us through this building of this website, e-commerce website. It was nice coaching and it was nice following along as well. Just for me to bring it up again, we are currently doing something called Solution Challenge. So you build solution and then you get some sort of gift from Google. The only criteria is you have to use one of Google's products. So if you are interested in building that solution challenge, you can reach out to any of the admins on the group chat, on the WhatsApp group chat, and you can also reach out to me personally. I'll be dropping my mobile number here. You can reach out to me personally as well as reach out to anyone on the WhatsApp group chat. So yeah, thank you so much, Michael. Thank you so much, Webflow, for making this possible for us. And yeah, we'll bring it to an end now. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you so much.